If you want the ultimate luxury sedan in the world, there's nothing quite like the Mercedes Benz S Class. It is the absolute benchmark. But if you don't want to run with the pack, well, you have other options. One of which is this one, the all-new 2022 Audi A8L. Well, of course, this is not an all-new car. It's just the facelift of the current generation of the A8L. And this has got a lot of updates. But the question is, why would you buy an Audi A8L over the best car in the world? The 2022 A8L is powered by a 3-litre V6 that produces 335 bhp, and that means this car can do 0 to 100 in 5.7 seconds. That is quite fast for a car this big. What's more, it has got quattro all-wheel drive system, and that means you get that security and traction of the legendary all-wheel drive system from Audi. But none of that matters today, because if you're buying an A8L or any other car in this segment, what you care about is this seat, the boss seat. So if the A8L has to make a dent in the S Class sales, this is where it has to excel. Is it the case? Let's find out. Now, of course, the A8L is very spacious. It stretches all the way up to 5.3 meters in length. It has a wheelbase of around 3100 millimeters. So as you can see, there is of course a lot of space. But what is of more importance here is that if it can do all those luxury bits that are necessary in a car like this. So of course, this comes with this boss button. This is called the Relaxation Package. So you press this button and the front seat just goes further away from you, freeing up a lot of room. Now, of course, it'll fold down. It has got a screen as well, a rear seat entertainment screen that will also fold down, but it'll come angled at me so that I can watch it. Now, as you can see, the leg rest is also out, and the party piece of the A8L is that it comes with a foot massage system. So that's not offered in the S Class, but it is offered on the A8L. So if you want to relax here, this has got everything. Now, apart from that, of course, it has got a lot of controls. There are two screens that I've already talked about. So these screens, you can hook your Netflix onto these screens, so you can catch on your favorite Netflix series. Rear seat passengers also get this control panel. This is also a touchscreen. You can't take it out. It's permanently integrated here, but it has got functionality for your seats, lights, blinds, media, radio. So everything can be controlled from here. Now, of course, in addition to that, these seats come with full ventilation, and you have got massaging functions as well. Now, among other things, it has got 4-zone climate control, so you can individually set temperatures for each one of you. Now, apart from that, the A8L is now offered in a choice of 4 or 5-seater versions. This is a 5-seater version, so if this thing goes in, it becomes a 5-seater. But I think again, this is of no use. This seat, you can think that it's a 5-seater, but who's going to sit here? It doesn't have any support. The seat is very small, and you've got this big transmission tunnel over here. So this is just on paper, it's a 5-seater. Of course, if you're going to spend over 1.5 CRs on a luxury car, you're not going to be sitting here. I'm sure you'll have a spare A6 or A4 for your kids or children. So that's the case here, because I don't think this 5th seat can be used. And more importantly, if someone is sitting over here, of course, you're going to lose all of your luxuries. So you need all these controls over here. So you can consider it as a 4-seater, because you don't want to lose out on these controls, which is what makes the A8L what it is. Now, apart from that, of course, if you put this down, you also have access to the chiller where you can keep your drinks, and this is of course very handy. Now, of course, there are blinds all over, and you can all control it from here. So in terms of luxury, I can't think of anything else that you'd want in a car. But at the same time, there are a couple of things that are worth highlighting, because you know, this car goes against the S Class, which is the benchmark for backseat luxury. So what does it miss out in comparison to the S Class? Well, first things first, there is no calf rest. As you can see, the under thigh support is of course great, but this doesn't come with a calf rest like offered in the S Class. And overall, I think it has to be said that the cabin doesn't feel as special as S Classes, because as soon as you enter the S Class, you just go wow. But this thing, it feels very Audi, it feels very German in that regard. It is a clean and clutter-free cabin, but If you sit in this car and then you sit in the S Class, the S Class of course feels more opulent. That has to be said. Similarly, the seats, they are great, they offer great support, but the cushioning, the seat material, it is a little hard because the seats, they don't feel as comfortable as they do in the S Class. So these seats are great. Of course, in isolation you're not going to have any complaints, but again, I have to compare it with the S Class because that feels a little more special, that is more comfortable as well. And that's not just the seats, because even the headrest, you know, it is very comfortable, very soft, but it's not S Class soft. So in terms of comfort, I still think the S Class is the ultimate benchmark. Now, one thing that I find particularly irritating or annoying about this cabin is that this boss seat, it's not a one-touch operation. You have to just be on it. So it goes, it's a lengthy process, and you have to just press the button all the time. I think it should have had that one press functionality because, you know, you don't really want to do all this work. Overall though, in terms of tech, in terms of features, everything works perfectly here. This is an Audi, so everything is brilliantly engineered. Everything falls in hand perfectly. You have got a lot of space. The sound system is brilliant. So in terms of overall comfort, yes, you won't have any complaints. But again, if you compare it to the S Class, it does fall a little short. Now, of course, the A8L might not match the S Class in terms of outright luxury, but where it's as good or even better than the S Class is when it comes to the ride quality. And that's because this thing comes with predictive active suspension. Audi's predictive active suspension is a fully active suspension system that can lift the car up or push it down in half a second depending on the road surface ahead. The system uses the car's front camera to detect bumps and undulations on the road ahead and adjust the damping on each wheel using a set of electromechanical actuators. The active suspension can lift or lower the A8L's ride height by up to 85 mm from its central position. Sure, it's not a cheap gimmick as it's a 15 odd lakh optional extra, but I have to say that it's worth every penny. Now, thanks to its sophisticated suspension setup, well, this car, it just rides over everything without a care in the world. This is one of the finest riding sedans in the whole world. It's not just in its segment, but the comfort level, the way it glides over imperfections, it's just phenomenal. The ride quality is incredible. On the highway, when you're driving this car, it doesn't have any sort of floatiness, it's just planted to the ground. But as soon as the road is broken, the cameras detect everything in the front, and then the suspension, it alters the damping, and you just go over it, and the car doesn't even move. You don't even feel anything. It is doing that in real time, and that is magical in the sense this is something of an engineering marvel. So you sit here in this car, you're just completely isolated. The refinement levels are phenomenal. You can't hear anything from outside. We are now doing close to 100 km/h on the expressway. I can't hear anything. I'm just isolated in here. This is just my zone. At the same time, the ride quality, again, I can't even feel that we are doing that sort of speed. Even if you do double the speed, I can bet you won't feel anything here because the comfort levels, the ride quality is just absolutely phenomenal. And I think this is the party piece of the A8L. In comparison to the S Class, well, we drove the S Class initially, that was the CBU version, and that had a little firm ride, but this one, it is just comfortable. It's comfortable everywhere, whether you're driving it in the city or bad roads, whether you're on the expressway, it is an all-rounder of sorts. Whereas the S Class, well, of course, it also has great ride comfort, but it does feel a little firm. And I think if there's one area where the A8L has a slight advantage over the S Class is in the ride quality, because this definitely feels slightly better than the S Class. The great thing about the A8 has always been that it's not single-handedly focused on the rear seat passenger, because with this car, it is actually quite fun to drive as well. And that same philosophy is also seen in this new model as well, because to be very honest, even if you take the wheel occasionally or wherever it is, this car is actually quite fun to drive. Now, this is powered by a 3-litre V6 engine. It produces 335 bhp and 500 Nm of torque. Does 0 to 100 in 5.7 seconds, like I said in the beginning. and it is a fast car. What's more, if you're on it, it also makes very sweet noises. So it has that typical driver involvement that you'd want from a German sedan. It has got that, and it is quite fun to drive. Performance is very brisk. At the same time, it's very smooth and seamless as well. Now, this engine is paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission. You don't get a dual clutch transmission here because they have chosen comfort over lightning fast shifts. But having said that, this transmission is also quite fast. It is very smooth and you don't have jerks or anything in between. What I like is if you are in dynamic mode, well, of course, everything is sharp. The throttle response, the gearbox, the steering, everything is sporty in that sense, but it won't bother rear seat occupant or anyone in the car because everything is quite smooth. There is a bit of a waiting time. It's not too much, but then it doesn't rush things up. It's not going to throw you around inside the cabin. Similarly, the steering is also well weighted if you put it in dynamic mode, and it feels quite agile to drive around corners. Now, that same active suspension, it also works wonders when you're driving this car fast, hard around corners because it controls the damping, it stiffens the springs, and at the same time it also reduces body roll. So there's a lot going on that front, but overall, even if you want to drive this car, it feels absolutely brilliant from behind the wheel. And then of course it has also got quattro all-wheel drive, so in terms of grip and traction, you don't really have to worry about anything. You can just plant your right foot and this car just goes without any drama. So overall, as a driver's car also, I think this is quite good to drive, and I think it is probably slightly better than the S Class in that sense because the way this feels, of course it's a long car, but even when you're driving it around, it feels quite easy in the sense it shrinks around you. It has also got rear wheel steering, this particular version. So on the whole, of course, it is an effortless car, but it's not numb or it's not really unexciting to drive. It has got a little bit of character, and I think in that sense, if you are going to drive your Luxobaj, well, you can think about this because it is a bit involving to drive, which is surprising. Now, before I end this segment, one thing that I find particularly impressive about the A8L is the brakes, because it has got strong brakes, the pedal has got great progression, and the way this car stops, well, you're not going to feel everything. That whole mass, that whole inertia coming to a stop, you don't really feel. It doesn't throw you around, you know, and that's quite impressive because, again, that's been designed or engineered in the way that comfort is top priority, but at the same time, the braking progression, the braking feel, it stops in time. You're not going to be thrown around. While the A8L matches the S Class pound for pound in terms of comfort and overall luxury, there's a major flaw in its ointment. Its cabin looks and feels an awful lot similar to the A6. Apart from a couple of bits and bobs here and there, the overall design layout, screens and controls, they all look identical. Now of course, the infotainment touchscreen is immaculate, but then is the same unit that you find in lower Audis. It doesn't even have wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. And it's a similar story on the outside. This facelifted version might have got more bling, but the A8 still looks a bit anonymous compared to the S Class. There's no denying that the A8L is a complete luxury sedan. It has got all the bases covered, it has got the tech, it has got the luxury, it has got the performance, and all in all, this is a complete package. But the question remains, would you buy it over an S Class? Well, of course, that is quite tricky to answer because the S Class, it has got that flash, it has got that X factor, it has got that brand image. So in that respect, of course, the Audi doesn't quite match the S Class, and that's why a lot of buyers are going to opt for the S Class still. But what the Audi brings to the table is that individuality. This is a different car. This has its own character. It has its own personality, and it just doesn't single-handedly concentrate on rear passengers. In fact, it is sort of a driver sedan as well. So it is a complete package in that respect. On top of that, it's also priced really well if you compare it with the S Class or the 7 Series, because this has got a lot more kit, and this is a CBU. This is not assembled here. So this is what works in favor of the Audi. It's going to be different. Like I said in the beginning, if you don't want to be a part of that S Class crowd, you'd want to invest in this thing because it just does everything beautifully. And it's not that it's a compromise on that front because like I said, it has got the features. The ride quality is out of this world because this is one of the finest riding sedans in the country, or in the world, in fact. So if you are looking for that comfort, if you want something different, something unique, I think the A8L is definitely worth considering over the S Class or any other sedan in that segment.